Go ahead.
that we make, or any superintendents make, or the governor for that matter make, it should be for the best interest of the kids.
Sure.
You know, we also have to think about the safety and well-being of our employees, from the custodians to the lunch ladies or men, to our aides, to our teachers. You know, and all that has made these decisions not unbearable, not unfathomable, but hard.
Yeah. It's in all of those positions, you know, from teachers' aides all the way up to custodians, have a age range. You know, we're talking 30, 40 years. And with a virus here that seems that the next decade older that you get, it seems to be a little bit more, you know, less in your favor, makes these, like you said, these decisions to make very, very hard.
Right. And see, we are privy to information that we would never share.
Sure.
Because of people's rights.
Yep.
And if we had an employee who has a medical condition that we know
Right.
that this, had they contracted this virus,
Sure.
could be deadly, I mean, we have to weigh those. If we have children that we know that are susceptible, we have to weigh those.
Yeah.
And in Britton Deerfield, you know, we have it different than any school in our county, and I would venture to say different than any school in southeastern Michigan, where in my building I'm the principal of pre-K 3 and high school.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, so when you look at children and who's contracting the virus as children, and I know we just had this big thing in Saline that
Yep.
we could touch on if you want, but it is the older children that may get the virus,
Right.
have very mild symptoms, or can be asymptomatic, and it's not the younger children.
Right.
But yet, all the plans that we hear coming down the pipe, the roadmap, people tend to think of it as a middle school to high school thing.
Yeah.
How can we make it as easy for everybody? I can't see a kindergartner being in front of one of those laptops for 8 hours a day.
Right.
So, and we got to think about that in Britton Deerfield, because, you know, my building's different.
And, and you know, we have a lot of similarities in the sense of we have a very small district too, and we're K through 12 in the entire building. And you have to, just for example, for our elementary rotations, you have the K through 5 children who actually venture into the high school end to come to the art room, because the art room is centralized between the high school and the elementary. So there's a lot of sharing already. And then you not to speak of the lunchroom and the libraries. There's all these shared, you know, common rooms. It's just it makes these decisions very, very hard.
It does. And then the language that's coming down is the cohort versus the commingle.
Yes.
And if you're walking around the school and going into different areas that other people, well, you've just commingled, and
Yep.
per the roadmap, everybody's got to wear a mask.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's funny because depending on, you know, the other issue about this, Jeff, is that you have conflicting reports of everything.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, I posted on Facebook just about how there's nothing for us as a society to sink our teeth in. You know, we're all kind of stuck in limbo because whether, you know, and we don't have to get political with it, but just talking about the powers to be kind of wavering and not necessarily making a decision one way or the other. It's sensible to wear a mask. We do that. But necessarily, should everything be open? Should it not be open? What should be open? Why is this one open? I mean, it's confusing, and it makes us all kind of just stuck.
Yep. And that is what makes it hard in the education world, because we have to remain apolitical.
Sure.
We have to, although we can have our own political ties and opinions,
Yep.
we have to remain apolitical.
Yep.
That said, it's a no-win situation.
Yep.
And you know, as a coach, you've already alluded to your coach. I'm a coach many sports. There are times you feel like there's a no-win situation, but yet you tell your players you're playing hard, and sometimes you win those situations. This is literally a no-win situation, because whatever plan your school, my school, Lenawee County,
Hillsdale County,
Hillsdale County, whatever plan they come up with, you're going to have parents who say you did a great thing.
Yep.
And you're going to have parents who are going to say, are you kidding me? I'm not sending my kid to school. Whether they're scared of safety or I'm not sending them to school because you're being too safe. My son's going to hold his girlfriend's hand in the hallway, and you're not telling me different. They're going to sit with their best friends at lunch.
Yeah, it's those, and I've heard some of those conversations, unfortunately, because at least, maybe not unfortunately is the wrong word, but I've heard some of those conversations when they talk about, and it comes from such a place of, not all of them, but the ones that I have experienced have been from such a place of anger. And maybe that anger is driven by what we were talking about, just the lack of anything cohesive for us to stick our teeth into. But what that does is it does put pressure on administration to have to make decisions, because what we try to do, I know what I try to do as a coach, I'm sure you do the same thing, you're a principal, is that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all, but damn, do you try. Like, you do try. Like, rules have to be applied and applicable to everybody. And it does cause these issues when you have, certain parents saying those things, and then you have certain parents on the other side. I just took Jeff over to the 7-Eleven to get a couple drinks for the show, and I was in there 5 seconds. And there was 3 people wearing masks. There was one guy not wearing a mask, and the one lady was very upset with him. And it's just the nature of where we are right now. So let's kind of get a little more specific if we can.
Yep.
I got some questions.
Sure.
Because I think these are questions that maybe some of our listeners might have, and maybe we can put their mind at peace. Not saying specifically to your district, but just in general. Let's say your district offers a complete online choice. So they have the choice come fall, because in 1 month time, man, we're starting.
Absolutely.
You're going to have those that feel comfortable coming into the school environment. Then you can offer this full online choice as well. But my question is I've been reading a lot of reports from, pediatrics and stuff of talking about the amount of, I guess, the amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? Knowledge that will be lost by these children, because it's very hard for, like you said, the elementary side of things to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. So how do you, what advice would you give to a parent waiving kind of those options to do what's best for your kid, but you also are trying to balance the idea of getting them a great education and not getting them behind?
So the first thing I would say, the most important thing I would say is wait.
Okay.
I don't think anyone has really come out with their full-fledged plan. And let's say not everyone. Detroit came out with their plan where they're a week on, a week off.
I saw that.
So what that means is, folks, is you'll split your population into 2 groups, an A group and a B group. And your A group comes Monday through Friday, and the B group's at home. And then the following week, B group will be in school face-to-face, A group will be at home. And when they're at home, they're supposed to be virtually learning. Now, the hard thing about that is it's not a pre-canned program that you buy online where you have an online teacher teaching that class, because you pay a lot of money per semester for those kids.
Yep.
So that means we would have to utilize what schools would have at their grasp.
Yep.
Meaning like a Google Classroom.
Yep.
I don't know if you got,
Yep,
okay.
absolutely.
Google Classroom is a fantastic tool. But then you get into the thing of equity. So if we are back to school full time and you waited and the parent says, nope, I don't feel
I'm not comfortable yet.
I'm not comfortable. I want to keep my kid at home. Well, if you're not doing that pre-canned expensive program, virtual program, or if your school is small, I don't know about you, where smaller schools may not be able to afford a virtual.
Sure, virtual learning.
Right.
Yep.
So, you have to do what's equitable, meaning whatever's offered at school, you have to offer at home.
Right.
So that's a huge obstacle and roadblock.
It really is, because there's a timing issue. If you just take the high school in, and you have a student that decided to be online versus in person, and the in-person classes still have 7 hours a day as of right now. As of right now, still have their normal 7 hours a day. They go into their class. That teacher has to move on to the next subject. And us being from small districts, that these teachers don't teach a lot of the same subject material from hour to end. They have a lot of different preps. Yeah. And because they have a lot of different preps, that means they have to kind of keep the day moving. They don't get to just sit down and grade papers or whatnot.
Right.
That's going to be, problematic because then you're going to have to tell these children that they have to have their work turned in by a certain time. Teachers have to then print that out or whatever. It just takes more time to get these things done.
Absolutely. And that brings me back to the most important word is wait.
Wait.
I mean, we are all, just the other day, this is how crazy my world's been. The 3 administrators in Britton Deerfield sat in an office about this size for 5 hours, listening to Zoom meetings. And in these Zoom meetings, you have attorneys, you have health department officials, you have senators, you have all the superintendents. And thank goodness I'm bald, Bob, because I would have pulled the rest of my hair out. and we get done, and it was literally 5 hours, and we got done, and we thought, wow, we have this, we're ready, here's a plan, we're ready to go, just to be told, no, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
You can't do that.
And with the best of intentions, thinking, this kind of solves more answers than it doesn't.
Yes.
And you can't do that.
And you can't do that. And that's the most frustrating, where you go, ugh, And so, yes, most counties are trying to do a broad-brushed plan.
Sure.
But I'm real. You know me, Bob. I'm real. Yep. I'm not naive. I just think that could be very tough. And I don't mean that in the sense to where I think schools will compete for students. Although that sometimes is the nature of the beast.
Yep.
Look at us.
School
we're
choice,
better. Right. So
that already exists.
It already exists. Yep. And so this could just exacerbate that. Or if people were honest and said, no, that's not what we're trying to do. I feel that each district needs to look at their county plans, follow the roadmap, do what's required. We're bound by that.
Yep.
Whatever the governor says required, you're bound by that. Whatever they said is highly recommended,
you better do it, or you better have a pretty good alternative.
Or you better have, the thing is, you almost need to have in writing why you're not doing that, because you don't want to be held
accountable.
Exactly.
Yeah, if something was to happen and you didn't follow a recommendation.
So we try to go as close to those highly recommended requirements as well. But then schools our size, it's a little harder than schools the size of, say, a Tecumseh or a Blissfield or Hudson, who can offer more just because they have a little more.
I gotta tell you, Jeff. So the issues that I'm having is, again, it's trying to keep my personal self out of the apolitical self that we have to be in the side of the administration, because we are bound to those things. The problem that I have is that I see some of these ideas. It goes back to kind of the early days of some of the shutdown stuff. It's like, it doesn't matter if I'm Republican or Democrat. It doesn't take someone, that has to be leaning one way or the other to walk into Walmart and figure out that I can shop in this side of this store, but I can't shop in this side of the store. So when those types of decisions are being made up here, and now they're in charge of the decisions that we have to somehow execute every single day, it's very hard to remove one's personal self.
It is. I call myself an educrat. Because education is totally different.
No, it really, really is. That's funny you say that.
And we're being told, without being political, we're being told what to do by a secretary of education who she herself has never been in a classroom.
Nope. And isn't that something?
And that's almost like a lawn care worker telling a brain surgeon where to cut.
It's funny. I will tell you this. We were lucky enough over at Waldron a couple years ago. We had a lady come down, and she had worked 30 years for Lansing. And I'm not going to give her name because bless her heart, but she was phenomenal. Like, I don't have enough great things that I could say for her. However, she had never been inside. She was kind of there to step in for our transition when we were looking for a principal. And she came down to kind of help us, right some wrongs and kind of straighten the ship a little bit. And she had never really, seen what inside of the room could look like when things go wrong. And I can remember a story of me, 5 girls all being catty with each other. They were upset. They felt they weren't being heard. So me, this lady from Lansing, and these 5 girls give them their voice. We sit in a room and we let them talk. Well, within 5 minutes, this thing went south, sideways, any other direction except for where it was supposed to go. And I remember her saying, let's just keep talking. Let's just keep talking. I got to a point where I couldn't talk anymore. So I remember it being like, hey, enough.
Right.
Enough. All right, you go back to class. You sit down. Like, and she looked at me when we were all said and done, and she kind of laughed. She's like, I had no idea. Oh. And that kind of explains it, though.
Absolutely. And that's the toughest part of our job, right?
Yeah.
Because when a parent, if we strip it down and we drill it down, because it's all about parents and then kids and then the school, right? Well, the parents you have your kid.
Yep.
And the same thing I said earlier about the diploma.
Yep.
I don't think any parent holds their newborn baby and goes, oh my God, I'm going to make sure your life is just the worst. No.
Nobody does that.
So they advocate for their student, whether they're a behavioral issue, whether they're the top student, whether they have a special need, they have ADHD, it doesn't matter.
That's a parent's job.
That is their child. They want what's best. Well, so do we. And the parent might see the behaviors and the quirkiness or whatever their child holds, but they don't see how they act or see how the other 25 children in that classroom act. On top of that, they don't see what teachers go through on a daily. On top of that, they don't understand really what a principal's role, and I am not just a principal, but a juggler, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a male positive role model when needed. And then my eyes were very open, like Miss Stacy Johnson, bless her heart. The things that our superintendents go through, and I mean, from Mark Hegg, our superintendent in the county, down to the superintendents who, state. I don't think and I've been a lot of walks of life.
Yeah.
A lot of different jobs, a lot of different areas.
You're not putting that head on anytime soon?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't met someone who works harder.
Sure.
And takes so much grief. Not that we all don't take grief in our job.
But when you're up there, it feels like a thankless job at times. Yeah.
It does.
Yep.
It does. And so that's why, we have to surround those great people with people like you and I. I mean, I try to be as positive as I can.
Yeah, and it's very you have to. That's the thing is that I feel like even right now in society, as you can see, there's a lot of anger. Mm-hmm. I've talked about this thing before. Maybe, I don't know if you've ever heard it. Have you ever heard of the brain state model?
No.
Okay, so my listeners are going to be like, again with the brain state. But long story short, there's 3 levels of brain state model. There's a survival state of mind, there's the emotional state of mind, and there's the executive state of mind. Mm-hmm. And the executive state of mind is where we should all strive to achieve, which is make decisions based off information and facts, and then go from there. Emotional state of mind is where I feel like majority of the people are at right now, where I know that's where the media is because they're trying to get ratings based off affirmation, based off making you feel a certain way. And it feels like right now there's such a rage in our country that just being a positive influence inside of a school building really does make the difference.
Well, how do you see people get into that executive frame of mind? I mean,
well, first of all, it's identification of like triggers, self-awareness, listening to other perspectives. But it's a lot of it starts with just self-awareness. Like, pull yourself back for a second. Like, even though you feel uncomfortable, you might feel an emotion, and it can happen in any walk of life. But those are the things.
So I think then, Bob, that to get there sometimes, it's just like this pandemic. Yeah. People don't really think about it until it hits close to home, right? And so I think the way I got there, and, this is a little bit of, sappy Mr. Sky getting personal here, but that's okay. I don't care. Yeah. I was a hothead in my younger days. Athlete, I was hot-tempered, and I don't know if I've shared this story with you, but, then I went through I have 3 children, a beautiful wife, and got my first teaching gig and had this pain. Yeah, I'm glad you're going here. Yeah, and so this pain equaled, long story short, being pancreatic cancer. And then you make the decision to do this morbid surgery that is probably going to kill me. Yeah. And leave my wife a widow and my children fatherless. But it's either try to deal with pancreatic cancer, and we all know that that's not a good thing. Yeah. Or go down this road and put your trust and faith in places it needed to be. You have to, yeah. Well, it worked out. That was in 2009. So then, fast forward to today, I think that change, that gut check has really made me into, and I think we all are somebody. We just got to find ourselves at some point.
Totally agree.
And it doesn't mean you have to be a jerk all the time. It doesn't mean you have to go against things all the time. How about listen? How about this whole Democrat, Republican, this whole wear a mask, don't wear a mask, this whole, can we just be people and listen to one another? And I think just my life experience in that point, because there were times I lay in bed, Bob, and said, I'm ready.
I can't
I
imagine.
can't do this anymore. And then I remember words my dad would say. My dad was a huge influence on me, and he would never, if I fell down, he'd be the first to get up.
Yep. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. Get up. Let's go.
And so
you needed that.
Needed it.
You needed those days.
Needed it. And so I try to smile every day. I try to laugh every day. I try to make a joke every day. I call my kids. I call my wife every day. I talk to friends every day. And when parents are, and I don't judge.
Sure. Nope.
And if they are scared, if they are worrisome, if they are upset with me, I'm the first, you can cuss me out, and I'm going to smile right back at you because I genuinely love you. I care about you.
Right. And there's something in that moment that, as most of the time, it's like you said, it's just this, they're an advocate for their kid and they feel like something is not being right or they're being wrong somehow. Let me go back to what you were just talking about, though. So with the pancreatic cancer, do you personally feel that you might be immune compromised?
Absolutely.
Because of, and then with the COVID, I mean, do you feel like, are you taking extra precautions? Like
we
what?
do.
Okay.
We do. My wife is a nurse.
Yeah.
My daughter is a nurse. So my wife actually, she dealt with a little bit of COVID-19 herself.
Yeah.
And she's fine. Everything's fine. So we do. We're constantly washing the hands. My youngest daughter, Josalia, is at home still, and she's constantly washing, and the kids worry.
Yeah.
I can't. If I became a worrier about it, I do what's best for me and everything. But yeah, I am. But man, I feel like I have been given this chance, and I know it's this, what I'm doing is a calling, and I do it because I love the kids. And
Sure.
I do it because I love people, and I do it because I think we need good people in the right places. And I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I really try.
Yeah. And, that's, it kind of, not to merge to the, Black Lives Matter or the police reform debate or anything of that nature, but there was conversation that was on the radio today talking about in a police environment, after someone's been on the job for years, they might want to go through a series of psychological evaluations just to kind of make sure that their head's still on straight, that they still have a passion for what they do, that this is still something, so that you don't get jaded. There might be some truth to that with teachers as well, because who you are on day one versus year 5, year 10, and so on and so on. You're a changed person. So those are things that you might need to be considered, just because I know I always try to pull myself back and be like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, this kid's upset. He's upset you. Give yourself 5 minutes, then come back and then say, okay, let's get this resolved. Because at the end of the day, that's what you both want, and you really are only going to achieve that by listening. Yep. So,
and I've always had ideas on things like that. And, I think what happens is we get complacent, we settle, and a great idea that I think school districts should have is we have a model. People think the education system's broken. It's not broken. It works perfectly for what it was developed for.
Yeah.
We just got to change it. We got to mold it. And it's the same thing. I mean, if you're that third grade teacher who's taught third grade for 22 years but taught 1 year, meaning you keep going back to that, I call them file cabinet teachers, where they teach the same thing year after year. They just get out of the file cabinet and nothing's changed. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Your kids do.
Yeah.
Your kids, it isn't the same child coming every year with different names. No. These kids are all different, and maybe we need to teach second grade for a couple of years and then go to first grade for a couple of years. Maybe go to third grade.
Just to keep your own perspective fresh. Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's the reason professional development exists in our field as it is, to keep your, on your toes, the update. When we come back, what I want to discuss is more particulars as well as on the adult side of things and what happens when an already short substitute field as it is. What happens if someone in the building does happen to catch it, what you think should be done, and should we raise high alarms, or should it just, it's inevitable, let's just have a plan now and go forward with it. So when we get back, we'll discuss that, and we'll more on this after the break. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here live inside of the beautiful Orange Wall studio. I'm sitting here with Jeff Scott, the principal of Britton Schools, Britton Macon.
Britton Deerfield.
Britton Deerfield?
There you go.
Britton. So, okay. Are you the principal of both then?
Nope. So I'm the principal of the Britton building.
That's what I was trying to get at. Okay.
The Deerfield building is a fantastic principal.
That's right.
Wolfing,
Deerfield came in, Macon dropped.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, I apologize for that.
No problem.
We were getting ready to talk about some of the challenges, not just with the student side of things, but what do you do when you have a shortage of teachers? And right now, for those of you that don't know, we have a very high need for substitutes in this state, not just in the state, but in the country. So if you're somebody that has particular amount of credits at the college level, 60, and you are looking to maybe make some extra cash and you have a love to work with children, please call, Deerfield, Waldron, Britton, call anywhere and put your name in the hat. It's a good way to make some extra money. So
yes, it's a great gig. You'd love it.
Yeah, but the challenges with that is, since there is a shortage, and this is where I kind of want to ask you is, are you preparing for the inevitability that at some point somebody, whether it be a child or a teacher in your school, is going to get it, coronavirus? And if they do, because here's the thing. It'd be very unfair for us to say nobody's going to, if we follow all these guidelines, nobody's going to get it.
Right. There's no 100% foolproof plan.
No.
So we are, I know in our county, we are going to be following the guidance of the health department and the guidance of our law firm, which in Lenawee County, the Troon Law Firm is who basically everybody has on retainer.
Okay.
And this is serious. So you got to remember, the roadmap calls for kids K-5 to wear a mask in common areas, meaning that will be your buses, hallways, if they're allowed to go to the cafeteria for lunch, cafeteria unless they're eating. While they're in the classroom, social distance much as possible, but masks aren't required because that becomes that cohort.
Right.
They won't be mingling anymore with kids. We're going to have our special teachers, for the most part in the county, going to their classrooms.
So how does that work as a physical education teacher?
So they will we're going to have them go outside as much as possible. And when they can't go outside, then they will go to the gym. That's the only special they'll be able to travel to. And really it'd be incumbent on the phys ed teacher to make sure they're social distance. Now, there's a lot there, because if you're teaching a basketball unit, a baseball unit, now you're using a common ball, how's that going to look? So there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Do we sanitize after every time they play catch?
Right. And I got to tell you, speaking as a PE teacher myself, I would tell you 75% of my elementary games are tag games.
Yep. And we are not going to allow any type of tagging games.
Yeah.
And again, let's talk about recess then.
Sure.
Historically, elementary kids would be able to go to recess right after lunch.
Yep.
Play with all the kids on the playground. That becomes a commingle, and anytime there's commingling, masks have to be worn.
Right.
To where if they're outside with their class that they're with all day long and they're in that cohort, they don't have to wear a mask. So I think most schools in the county, when it comes to talking K-5, recess, now we're going to really think about schedule. Maybe they won't go to recess right after lunch.
Right.
Maybe we'll have to schedule that out just like a class.
And I think it's important. I just want to make sure that I hammer this so that people listening, it's important to note that they are following guidelines that were given to them by the health department, the state officials. So these are not things that, Britton or Jeff Scott sat down and, came up with on his own. These are things that we're bound to have to do.
Yep, we are bound to these by the governor's roadmap.
Yep.
And then, everybody in the state has got to turn in their plan that has got to be certified by the Board of Education first, your own Board of Education. Then it's turned into the state to be okayed, and then we can roll it out to parents and teachers. Think about it. You're a phys ed teacher, and you don't know what's going on yet, just like everybody else. Like, how's my class going to look? Am I going to be walking around with a spray bottle and,
as they're running,
squirting sanitizer, come here, and chasing kids around? But no, so when you talk about, because we have to break this down, your original question. So if you're in a cohorted classroom at the elementary age, you got the teacher with the mask, and the children without the mask, as far apart socially distanced as possible. I came from the elementary world. Yeah. Before I was a principal, before I grew up, I was a kindergarten teacher. Yeah. And I taught everything from GSRP, which is a preschool type setting, through 5th grade. That will be tough, but we're teachers. I mean, look what happened on March 13th. They threw us a roll of duct tape and a piece of bubble gum and said, fix it. And we did. Right. So if a child, so this is the guidance from the health departments, this is the guidance from the state of Michigan. If a child has a fever, a sniffle, a cough, we don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. We are going to ask the parents to keep those students home and get tested. Mm-hmm. But we don't necessarily, we don't know quite yet if they're going to recommend or require a note go home. Okay. Because, we don't send a lice note. If a kid's scratching their head, we don't send a note home about lice until we find out they have lice. Right.
Then, and when he's talking about a note, he's talking about a note that goes out to the community as a whole, not just,
And so right now, the way it looks, and I'm not talking Britton Deerfield, and I'm not talking Lenawee County, I'm talking state of Michigan. Right now, it's looking as if a child has a fever or some sort of symptom. We are not going to scare the mess out of parents and saying, hey, little Bobby was in the same class with somebody who had a fever, because if we had to do that, I'm telling you, as principal of an elementary school, there are children that come down to the office
every day.
Yep. My stomach hurts, or a lot of times it's either because they're hungry or they ate too fast. Yep. Or they come down saying they feel hot, but their fever's 99.
They're just not. They feel off, but they don't know how to vocalize it.
And if we were to send a note home to every household at that point, or make a phone call out, hey, there was
and that's going to be some tricky waters to navigate, because you have to be 100% sure that they have it before you do, like you said. But even when the inevitability, look, I'm using words that he won't. When he's being very, very kind. When he's saying it's going to be tough in a kindergarten world, I'm telling you, I think it's going to be impossible to keep social distancing, because their very nature innately is to be around each other. We were talking off camera about the moment when little Joe comes up and says, hey, Mr. Scott, their innate behavior is to give you a hug. Uh-huh. And you're going to be forced in that moment to say, now, wait a minute. Right. And you're going to have that conversation. And you will. And I know you will. But I will as well. But it's the conversations that, parents, you could help if you can have them up front. To just talk about, keeping the social distance from, not just the children, but also from the adults. I kind of loaded it before we got to the break about what do you do in this case if you have a teacher, and we're both small schools. I can speak for Waldron. We do not have a teacher that teaches the same class twice. Yep. My English teacher teaches 6 hours out of the 7 hours a day, gets 1 hour for the prep. The other hours are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade English. So
they're commingled.
So here's the thing. Here's the issue with that. The issue is that if my English teacher gets COVID-19 and has to quarantine for 2 weeks minimum, okay, well, we have a very select few people that can come in and substitute. Well, okay, we get we're one, but guess what? Joe Schmo up the road at Pittsford now has the same issue. Yeah. The shortage is going to come. And so what would you do?
So what I'm thinking is going to happen, and this is, again, we're still in this phase 1 of these trials, right? Schools our size, to be honest with you, may be something where we may have to quarantine 14 days.
Oh, you mean
teacher and students? Okay. Whoever was in direct. So when they talk about who needs to be quarantined, contact tracing, they need to be So let's say, I have symptoms where I have COVID-19 and we're within the 6 foot distance for
Sure.
more than 15 minutes. You potentially would have to quarantine.
Ah,
If your teacher's in the front of the room, which is highly recommended,
Yep.
and all desks facing forward and away from the teacher, and they've maintained that 6 feet of distance and nobody's been around them, and the teacher gets COVID-19 just because they went to the store and didn't wear masks
Sure.
or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be, then they probably won't need to be quarantined.
okay.
But all that is still
Up in the air.
Yes, because, and here's the thing. Now, you send a note home saying, hey, well, Mr. Scott has been, tested positive. He's doing great. He's, good path of recovery. You want to be, but your child was in Mr. Scott's class. But there's no need to self-quarantine because they were never around Mr. Scott for 15 minutes and never within that 6 foot bubble. There's still going to be parents say, oh, heck no.
Yeah,
They're staying their butts at home.
Especially because here's the other thing. When school starts back up.
Yep.
So we might have coronavirus taking place, but you're also going to have little Joe who stole little Jim's blocks, and you're going to have one who got mad and threw it down at him, and you're going to have interactions all day. So I know that Mr. Scott is on the go, putting out fires all day long. That's his job.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to say to you, can you remember all of the people you've been in contact with for the last 2 weeks?
Right.
I mean, he'll say it's tough. I'll say it's impossible. He's right. It's challenging at the very least. It's going to be challenging. And it is right. I'm asking you questions that we need to wait on. The thing is, though, these are questions, though.
Absolutely.
And we are a month out.
Yep.
And I just think that these are questions that the listeners might have.
Right.
The other question that I have personally, I'm also the athletic director, so I wear quite a few hats at the school. How can we say no tag games, but Joe or Jill's brother now is going to go play football or going to go play basketball, which is, to me, are those even they don't make sense.
They're governed by 2 different agencies.
Yep.
So you got the state of Michigan, who are saying, here are the guidelines to return to school, but we defer to the MHSAA for the guidelines of return to sports.
Right.
And sometimes they don't really see eye to eye.
Yeah.
That's that whole, that's a $1 million question of, okay, well, what's right and what's wrong?
Right.
You and I both are coaches.
Right.
I want to play.
I want to play.
I have athletic children.
Yep.
I know our athletes want to play. But my sister, for example, has never been an athlete, nor does she like athletics. And we have those folks out there too. And again, I'm not judging. That's fine. And they're going to say the exact same thing. Yep. How if you say my kid can't come to school, a week on, a week off, or half a day in and half a day out, or whatever your plan is going to be, but yet you're allowing these football players and these volleyball players and these cross country athletes commingle out there without wearing masks and hit each other, and how is that? So the couple things I would say to you parents out there is a difference between fair and equal.
Yep.
Do your research. If you have questions, reach out to your local superintendents and your local principals. Whatever answers we have, we will try to give.
Sure.
I will warn you, though, that there are times we're going to give you answers that will change. And please don't kill the messenger.
Yeah.
Everything we are trying to do is for your child's safety and well-being first and foremost. And then our staff's safety and well-being, almost 1B. There's no next. Right. It should be together. And we're not going to make you all happy. We're going to do our damnedest. PG. We're working hard, Bob. You asked my wife, one of the best women in this world, she would not lie to you of the number of hours that I have put into this and stay up at night and don't get any sleep. And that's just this much compared to what our superintendents are doing.
Right.
And so, again, wait.
Wait and patience and empathy for everybody, I think, is huge because, I was just telling. I went on a trip over the weekend, as did you, right?
Yep, sure did.
We'll talk on that in a minute. But we, with the mask mandate now being, I believe, in over 30 states. Yep. I was complaining to my girlfriend at the time about the mask. Yep. I don't like wearing the mask, but I wear the mask. Yep. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, there's frontline workers, essential workers that have been doing this every day. Your wife's a nurse. Yep. She wears it every single day. And it just, it's kind of like your dad told you when you were feeling sorry for yourself. Yep. Stop it and just move on. Put it on, shut up, and just deal with it.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like, regardless of my own personal feelings, because I got to tell you, I come from a standpoint of maybe I'm being a little ignorant with this, and I try not to be. Right. I've done my research. I've listened to the people. I think the best thing that you can do against this virus, hopefully, is to try to pump up your immune system as best as you can. Parents, let your kids play outside as much as possible. There's huge vitamin D in that. Vitamin D is a huge part of your immune system. To me, not that I say I want the coronavirus, but I would love to know if I've had it or not, see if I've had the antibodies to it. Yep. Because when school starts, I'm not somebody who's going to want to take 2 weeks off once we get going.
Right. You're right. And so I think there, when people say, well, there's two camps, you got the Democrats or Republicans, or you got the far left, the medium left, the right, the far right. To me, and I'm not the end all be all. And regardless of how I feel about mask wearing, right? Yeah. It's like I have a cousin who's very outspoken, and he feels his rights are being stripped. He feels that, and so we've heard the whole argument that nobody has really said anything when they said no shirt, no shoes, no service, and is that a decency rule? Is it because they don't want people walking barefoot and getting cut? Okay, well, if you had no problem with no shirt, no shoes, why no mask? Why is all of a sudden a mask which covers this much, and you're in a we just went to the 7-Eleven, was it?
Yeah.
And literally in there 5 minutes, and you can't wear a mask. I mean, regardless of and before I came in today, I was able to watch President Trump's and he even said wearing a mask is patriotic. I mean, so even he's starting to tend. Now I don't know if there's. I guess the way I look at it is, if me wearing a mask might save my mother, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And because there's a law out there, right? Bob, you don't have children, right?
Nope.
When when you do have children and you put your children in a car, you're going to put them in a car seat, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't, you take a huge risk.
Yeah.
And if you get pulled over, you get a ticket.
You're going to put them on a seatbelt on them, too.
But I don't feel like they're taking our civil liberties away. They're trying to keep your child as safe as possible. Now, I'm not saying it's 100%.
Right.
Bob, it is not a 100%. You get in a car accident, some kids die, unfortunately.
Right.
Wearing a mask is probably not 100%.
Right.
But not wearing a mask is 0%.
Exactly. It's an interesting conversation to be had, and that has been being had all across every household that I've went in. Everybody's had an opinion on it, and I actually tend to just listen as much as I possibly can.
Great advice.
Yeah, great advice. Just listen. But at the end of the day, I talk about the immune system. I just think it's important for people to play. I think it's important for people to work on. It's funny, we have this conversation about wearing masks or not. There's a whole nother conversation, we don't need to have it right now, but about what we eat, overeating, how that's doing to our immune system, the amount of deaths that come from that, sort of, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that we should talk about, and to put our listeners at ease, is we do have a responsibility to the elder population and those that are immune deficient. We do have a responsibility, and it comes back to wearing a mask and, hand sanitizing and, continuing to social distance. We have those responsibilities to our loved ones, as you talked about, your mom, my grandparents. I just went on a trip. I'm 2 weeks away from my family now.
Absolutely.
And that's just...
My oldest daughter's pregnant, and 2 weeks away. 2
weeks away. And that's just the common courtesy thing to do, because... Again, this is all personal. It all comes down to what's personal to you. I have one of my best friends lost his sister to this virus.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
She did have some deficiencies ahead before then, but this was something that, she would have continued on if this didn't happen. So she had to take a lot of precautions beforehand, but still. But it comes back to this idea of just taking care of your immune system, doing the things that you have to do to maintain your health. But I kind of want to get on and navigate to this next area, which is on the screen here, we have the Florida's largest teachers union sues the state over reopening schools. Now, not to get into the politics of all this, but what happens if your school shuts down for 2 weeks and now all of a sudden parents have to live with that? How are they, you just get the economy going again. Parents go back to work if they are working and now they got to tell their bosses, hey, I need 2 weeks off because my school decided to shut down because of, the COVID. Is that business going to keep that person on? Or what if a teacher, keeping it more specific to the teacher, what if a teacher is immune deficient or is one of those and says to a district, I do not feel comfortable working this year.
Yep, and that's happening. Now, it's not a catch-22.
Okay.
Because if it gets bad enough to close your schools down, they're closing everything down.
Okay.
Just like they did in March. That's when the unemployment kicked in with the bonus and
right. But you were talking specifically about if a teacher in your school had it, you might have to quarantine the entire school for 2 weeks.
You're saying with that, if we chose to shut the school down,
right? Yeah.
You now as dad or mom. Bob, those are questions we've got to answer. I think, because when we talk about that as a group, you got to remember that the lens we're looking through is for the kids' safety and for the staff's safety.
Right.
I guess as a parent, this could be a good learning point to where maybe parents should start planning.
Okay.
For that, like ahead of time. I can't see.
No, I think that's a great answer.
I can't see a business out there saying, well, if you can't come to work because your son or daughter's at home quarantining because their teacher came down with COVID, then you're fired.
They probably don't want them to go to work. But you say that. So here's my question, though. We have no idea. I know there's a lot of great advancements right now with the vaccine and some of the early tests, and that's great. But we're still, you and I both know, we're months, if not years away from a vaccine if we get one. If a teacher tells a district, especially a small one, I am not comfortable teaching English or math this year because of my does that teacher keep its job?
And that is discussions that the superintendents will have with the unions about what's going on. And smaller schools like ours, I can only, my lens is small schools.
Right. And I know I'm asking you tough questions.
But no, these are great. The meetings that I've been around and heard, you have schools saying, we're going to go full online until we are 100% sure that no one's going to catch COVID.
Right.
Well, that could be 5 years.
Could be, yeah.
Okay. So will that district lose some students who parents really feel it important to be face-to-face? Will they gain some students? So it becomes that whole game again, right?
Right.
But for us, and I know, I've talked about Ms. Johnson multiple times tonight. I think that'd be something we would really sit down and listen again and understand where they're coming from. Now, a lot of our hands are tied through the state stuff. You may need a doctor. Like, if you were that compromised, then you better be bringing
some type of documentation.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, we would already know who those employees are.
Ahead of time, sure.
I think those discussions probably would have already been had.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I couldn't believe the headline that I read. Florida's largest teacher union sues state over reopening of schools. And I was baffled by that. Yeah.
Detroit Public Schools started their summer school.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been.
Nope.
So they started their face-to-face summer school program.
Oh, okay.
Well, a lot of their own teachers are picketing and yelling at the teachers. So let's say, for example, you feel comfortable, you want to go in and help your students. Yep. You go into school and you're helping these at risk. You're in summer school because you're at risk.
Right.
Either failed the semester,
something,
whatever.
You got a credit recovery somewhere, yeah.
And you chose to help those students out, but yet your fellow coworkers are out front picketing, saying it's unsafe for you and the students. But yet it's your choice, the parents' choice to send the students to this online, and that's what I'm hoping doesn't happen. Now I have, in my little district, Britton Deerfield, I think all our teachers are on board waiting. Just wait. They miss their kids so much they cannot wait to get into this classroom.
Just ready to get started.
Yes. But doesn't mean that there may be one, once it gets closer, says, no, I got little ones at home, or my husband. What if their husband or wife is compromised at home and they don't want to bring it home? Well, that's kind of what I live on a daily with my wife being a nurse.
We all have extensions of ourselves that it's like you got to kind of take those, weigh those options. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I don't know, we have a lot. I hope I didn't come off as a bundling idiot tonight, but there are just so many unknowns, but I hope I've answered a lot of the questions tonight.
No, Jeff, I think you did awesome, man. I appreciate it as always. It's one of those things where I feel like I know I have these questions, and I know I've spoke with my administration, my principal, my superintendent. We have a group chat. We've done the Zoom meetings. It's just we're trying to get a grasp on what's going on. But the thing is that it'd be a lot easier if I'll say personally. You don't even have to acknowledge this, but I'll say personally, it would be a lot easier if we would just choose a direction. Whether it be full lockdown, everybody in the country for 4 to 6 weeks, and then start a delayed opening and go from there, or we open everything up and we take care, we wear the mask, we do the social distance thing. It'd be a lot easier because I feel like that way you're giving your immune system a chance to fight it. The economy's thriving because myself's taking a personal chance. You might take a personal chance. The millennials, everybody's going, they're out there because those are, at the end of the day, it's the survival rate that really should be the headline of this story that doesn't get talked about enough.
That doesn't ever get talked about. So now, I will tell you this, some of the ideas, not Lenawee County, just across the board, if not the nation. One idea is take the year off. So if you were to be a junior this year in high school, next August, you'll be a junior coming back, and they extend your age, how some students age out. Okay? I don't know how I feel about that. Another ideal is...
Parents might like that. Get one more year with my kid. But kids, on the other hand...
Or coaches probably love it, too.
That'd be awesome.
I get a little Nico, one more year of football on the field.
That'd be amazing,
But the other ideas that have popped up on, websites or meetings or whatever is we wait. I love that word wait until January, and you do a balanced year. And you get all your sports in, you get all your school in, and then you figure out some sort of break, and then you maybe, if you did a January through that December, you kind of take a break, and then you kind of wean back into the old school calendar. We've talked about Detroit Public Schools week on, week off deal. There's half day rotations.
I've seen 4 days on. Everybody cleans. It does the online thing on Monday. To me, it's all about whose version of trying to make it look like they're doing the most. I hate saying that because it sounds so filthy.
It does, but we understand this world, and that's where, going back to what we said earlier, it cannot be about recruiting of kids, saying we're the best, because ultimately, we can say that counties want to have a county plan, but ultimately superintendents are going to do what is best for their district and their makeup. Like I said, in our county, I have the only building that has elementary kids with high schools. So
that's a challenge for you guys.
It's a challenge. So whatever the other Lenawee County schools do may not work for Britton Deerfield. We may look different. And
you should be.
We already do look different. So our plan may look different. Now, if that garners kids to come to Britton Deerfield or kids want to leave Britton Deerfield because of that, that's just, I guess, the nature of the beast. But our district's not going to put it out there like, we're doing this to undermine or, whatever the other schools in our county are doing. We want what's best for all the kids in our county. I believe and I'm talking pre-pandemic, I'm talking just in general. At some point, I think our counties need to be on board and do the same thing.
Amen.
And we were not fighting for kids.
Amen. I mean, I always thought you got your common calendar, but your curriculum would be a lot nicer too if we
Absolutely.
could get on that. But those are questions for another day. I would love to have you back, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we had some technical difficulties. It wouldn't be Bobby's Talks 3 Dots without it. So I wanted to give this man a fair send-off. Jeff Scott, principal of Britton Deerfield Schools. I just wanted to say thank you as always.
You got it.
My mentor, my friend. I really appreciate you being here, man.
You got it, man. And this is great, and I hope you get a lot of people to watch us. And
just tagging Jeff Scott's name is going to give me everything I need to know. So he is a crooner. He is he's a golfer. He is first and foremost, he's a friend, a father, a principal. He's a lot more than that. Thank you for being here. As always, enjoy the show. There's always more to the story. We will see you down the road. So long. We did it, buddy.
we did it.